Before we begin, consider this your dark hour reminder. If you want more real stories that keep you awake long after the screen goes black, hit that subscribe button, leave a comment, and buckle up. Because this one starts with a woman who vanished before sunrise, a lie that fooled an entire community, and a truth no one saw coming. The first police call came in at 6:42 a.m. The dispatcher's voice crackled over the radio, strained but controlled. A neighbor from Willowbrook Lane, a quiet cul-de-sac lined with maple trees and multi-million-dollar homes, reported something off at the residence at the end of the street. The lights had been on since 3 a.m. The garage door was wide open, and the homeowner, 39-year-old mother of two, Elise Harland, hadn't been seen leaving for work. Her silver SUV was still in the driveway, coated in early morning frost. Officer Darren Cole arrived first. The sun hadn't risen yet, and the air carried that uneasy stillness only small towns get before the world wakes up. He parked his cruiser, approached the front door, and immediately felt a shift in the atmosphere. Something about the silence didn't feel natural. Elise's home was always alive. Kids running, a dog barking, her laugh drifting out the windows. But now it felt hollow, almost abandoned. He knocked. No answer. He stepped inside. The warmth of the house hit him first. The heater was running at full blast. The second thing he noticed was the smell. Faint, metallic, unsettling. The kitchen was spotless. Too spotless, considering Elise had two young kids. A single coffee cup sat on the counter, half full, still warm. Her phone lay beside it, face down. That was the first red flag. No parent with two children leaves the house without their phone. By the time Detective Mariah Kessler arrived, the tension had already spread among the responding officers. They had performed a full walkthrough. Elise was nowhere in the house. No signs of a break-in. No signs of a struggle. Just a home frozen in time, as if someone had pressed pause on her life. Kessler noticed the small details, the kind only an experienced investigator catches. The mudroom rug was slightly shifted. A coat hook had been bent. A faint smear on the tile floor, barely visible unless you caught it from an angle. And most chilling of all, Elise's running shoes were gone, but her workout jacket was still on the hanger. If Elise had gone for a run, she never made it far. Her husband, Graham Harland, was the next call. He answered with a calm voice that immediately struck Kessler as wrong. She had heard panic before, grief, fear, but Graham sounded composed. He explained that he had left early that morning for a work trip in Boston. He said Elise must have overslept, or maybe she left to drop the kids off at her sister's house. But when Kessler mentioned Elise's phone sitting abandoned in the kitchen, his composure slipped. Not much, but enough. A slight pause. A moment too long. Graham promised to drive back home immediately. But instead of arriving in an hour, it took him nearly 3. While officers waited for him, they canvassed the neighborhood. The same neighbor who made the 911 call mentioned hearing something around 3:17 a.m., a car door shutting, then a second one. Not forceful, not violent. Controlled. Intentional. She assumed Elise was heading to the gym early, something she occasionally did. But when asked if she heard the garage door open, the neighbor hesitated.
No.
She hadn't heard that. Yet the garage door had been open when police arrived. Things weren't adding up. The first real break came when officers checked Elise's security system. It wasn't a full CCTV setup, but small motion-activated cameras sat above the front porch, driveway, and back patio. The back patio feed was corrupted. The front porch camera was dead, its wires cut clean. But the driveway camera? That one recorded something. At 3:22 a.m., Elise's SUV headlights flickered on. The engine started, and a hooded figure stepped into frame. Not Elise. Taller, broader, movements deliberate like someone trying hard not to attract attention. The figure climbed into the driver's seat, reversed out of the driveway, then stopped in the street for nearly 10 seconds before slowly pulling away. That clip alone turned the missing person call into a suspected abduction. When Graham finally arrived, exhausted and wide-eyed, Kessler didn't waste time. She showed him the footage. His reaction was dramatic, hands to his face, a whispered, "Oh my God," pacing the room. but something about it felt rehearsed. Every detective develops a sixth sense for genuine shock versus performance, and Kessler felt the edges of something dishonest creeping in. Where exactly were you this morning?
Who were you with?
Why did you leave so early? Why didn't you answer Elise's calls yesterday evening? Graham had answers for everything, and each one seemed ready, prepackaged, perfectly timed. He insisted he had left at 2:40 a.m. for a conference 3 states away. He said he had gas station receipts, phone records, email confirmations. But his certainty only raised more eyebrows. In cases like this, people aren't supposed to be perfect. Perfect is suspicious. As officers spread out through the house again, Kessler asked about the running shoes. Graham said Elise always left them by the mudroom bench. But when he opened the drawer where she kept her athletic gear, his face drained of color. Her shoes were there. Both pairs. That meant Elise hadn't gone for a run. She hadn't stepped outside voluntarily. Someone took her, or convinced her, or tricked her. The question was who and why. Detectives expanded the search. A team combed the nearby woods. Others reviewed highway cameras for Elise's SUV. And Kessler did what she always did in cases that felt too clean. She started digging into the last 48 hours of Elise Harlan's life. Friends painted a picture of a woman who was kind, thoughtful, and stressed. Not unusual stress, marital stress. They admitted Elise had confided in them about late-night arguments, unexplained absences, money missing from accounts. She had even told one friend she planned to speak with a divorce attorney. That was the first moment Kessler felt her stomach drop. A missing woman. A crumbling marriage. A husband with a perfect alibi that appeared too perfect. But it wasn't until officers made one more pass through the garage that they found the detail that changed everything. Behind a stack of storage bins, tucked so far back it was almost invisible, a single strip of duct tape lay on the floor. A strip with a faint reddish smear running across it. And next to it, a torn piece of fabric that looked like it had been ripped from clothing. Not random. Not accidental. Evidence. Evidence someone had tried to hide. Kessler's heart pounded as she slipped on gloves and lifted the tape into an evidence bag. Something in her gut told her they were standing on the edge of the truth. A brutal, inconvenient, dangerous truth. And then they found one more thing. A small, locked cabinet bolted to the side wall of the garage. Graham claimed it held old tools, but when officers forced it open, what was inside didn't match anything Elise should have owned. And it didn't match the story Graham Harlan had been telling them. It was the first crack in his perfect alibi. A crack big enough for the truth to start leaking through. The cabinet door hung open like a wound. Inside were objects that didn't belong in a suburban garage. Items that made everyone in that room feel the temperature drop. Detective Kessler leaned in slowly, eyes narrowing as she scanned the contents. A set of heavy-duty zip ties. A roll of industrial duct tape. An unregistered burner phone. And a black notebook with no label. None of it fit with Graham Harlan's image as a polished real estate developer. These weren't tools for fixing things. These were tools for restraining someone, tracking someone, planning something. Graham insisted the cabinet wasn't his. He said the previous homeowner must have left it. But the house had been renovated top to bottom 2 years earlier, and according to the contractor who walked through the door just 30 minutes later, that cabinet had been installed at Graham's request. Custom bolts. Custom lock. No one else would have had the key. Kessler didn't say a word. She didn't have to. The silence around Graham grew heavier by the second. Officers collected the notebook first. The pages were filled with short, jagged notes. Addresses, dates, times, phone numbers, initials. Nothing too clear, nothing too direct, but the pattern was obvious. Surveillance-style observations. Meetings at odd hours. Repeated mentions of someone labeled only as YH. Elise's initials. The burner phone was worse. It had only one contact saved, a number not listed in any public directory. Recent calls. Late-night messages. No names, just a thread of brief exchanges. 3 a.m. is better. Garage. Make sure she doesn't see you. And the last one, sent just 12 hours before Elise vanished. This ends tonight. Graham swore he'd never seen the phone before. Swore he'd never written in the notebook. But the tremor slipping into his voice, the way his eyes darted from object to object, it was the first time he looked less like a grieving husband and more like a man realizing a wall was closing in on him. Still, Kessler didn't take the bait. In her experience, guilty men panicked louder than innocent ones. She wanted evidence, not theatrics. Before she could press him further, an officer rushed in with new information. Highway cameras had spotted Elise's SUV less than an hour earlier. But it wasn't anywhere near the routes someone might take leaving town. It was heading east, toward the old industrial district, a place full of abandoned warehouses and rusting rail lines. A place people used when they didn't want to be seen. Kessler made the call. They were moving. As the convoy of patrol cars rolled out of Willowbrook Lane, the Harlan house stood behind them like a pristine shell, quiet, polished, and hiding something rotten. Graham rode in the back of one cruiser, pacing himself into frenzy, repeating the same lines. I didn't hurt her. I didn't touch anything. I didn't do this. Kessler kept her thoughts to herself. The industrial district was 20 minutes away, but the scenery changed like crossing into another world. The manicured lawns and clean sidewalks gave way to cracked pavement, graffiti-tagged loading docks, and rows of corrugated metal buildings long since claimed by dust and stray cats. And there, under the gray sky, they saw it. Elise's SUV, parked crookedly beside an abandoned textile factory. Its headlights were off. Its windows were fogged. One door was slightly ajar. Officers approached with weapons drawn. The tension was wired tight enough to snap. When they finally pulled open the driver's door, they found exactly what they feared and what they didn't. The car was empty, but Elise had been inside. Her scarf lay on the back seat. Her bracelet was on the floor. And on the passenger seat was a single piece of paper, folded once. Kessler slipped on gloves and opened it. For words, written in messy, frantic handwriting. He isn't who you think. It wasn't signed. There was no blood. No fingerprints. But the urgency in those words cut through Kessler's chest. It didn't feel like a killer threatening them. It felt like someone warning them. Someone who knew Elise. Someone who knew Graham. Someone who might have been there and panicked. While crime scene techs began processing the SUV, another officer shouted from across the cracked concrete lot. There were footprints, fresh ones, leading from the car toward the factory loading entrance. Kessler followed them, heart hammering. The loading bay doors were half open, old chains dangling like rusted vines. Inside, the air was damp, thick with the smell of mildew and cold metal. The beam of Kessler's flashlight cut through dust that floated like ash. 15 feet in, they found another piece of fabric on the ground.
Torn.
The same color as the one in the Harlan garage. Elise had been here. Recently. But she wasn't alone. The footprints told a story. Hers, smaller and light, and another set, heavier, deeper, trailing closely behind her. Too close. The team pressed deeper inside the warehouse. Empty pallets. Rotting cardboard. Old machinery caked with rust. The sound of dripping water echoed through the massive hollow space. Every step felt like stepping deeper into someone else's plan. Then movement. A shadow flickered in the corner of the room, near the stairwell that led up to the catwalks. Officers rushed forward, flashlights locking onto the figure. A man stood there, hood pulled low, hands raised, shaking. His face was pale, exhausted, terrified. Not the confidence of an abductor. Not the aggression of a violent offender. This was someone who looked hunted. He spoke first, voice cracking. Please, I'm not the one you're looking for. The officers closed in. Where is Elise Harlan? Kessler demanded. The man swallowed hard. His eyes darted upward, toward the catwalk, then back down at the officers. I tried to help her, he whispered. I told her to leave before he found out. But she didn't believe me. Who? Kessler pressed. Who are you talking about? The man's breath trembled. His gaze shifted to the open doorway behind the officers, as if expecting someone to walk through it. Graham, he whispered. He hired me. He wanted me to scare her. Just scare her. Make her think someone was following her. But then he changed. He said he needed her gone. The room seemed to freeze. And you took her?
Kessler said.
No. The man shook his head violently. No, I backed out. I told him I wouldn't do it. I left her at the house. She was alive. She was fine. But he already had a plan. Kessler's blood ran cold. If this man wasn't the abductor, and Elise had been alive when he last saw her, where did she go? Who moved the SUV? Who left the note? And why was the cabinet full of restraints in Graham's garage if he had someone else doing the stalking? Unless, tell me where she is, Kessler demanded. The man hesitated, eyes wide with fear. Not of the police, but of something else, someone else. I can show you, he whispered. But you need to understand something. He stepped closer, lowering his voice until it was barely audible. Graham's alibi, it's not just fake. It's impossible. Kessler stared at him. What do you mean? The man exhaled shakily. Because when Elise disappeared, Graham wasn't in Boston. He looked directly into Kessler's eyes. He was with me. The words echoed through the warehouse like a gunshot. And suddenly, everything they thought they knew collapsed. For a full 10 seconds, no one in the warehouse moved. The man's words hung in the air with the weight of a confession and the terror of something far worse. Detective Kessler stepped closer, studying every flicker in his expression. He wasn't proud of what he'd done, but he wasn't lying. She could feel it like a pulse under the skin of the moment. Start talking, she ordered. Why were you with Graham? The man swallowed. Because Graham hired me, but not to watch Elise. He hired me to watch himself. The officers exchanged confused glances. He continued, voice trembling as if the truth itself hurt. He said someone was after him. That someone wanted to ruin him. He thought Elise was working with them. He thought she was collecting evidence against him, preparing to take everything. He wanted to know if she was meeting anyone, talking to anyone, planning anything. So he hired you as a what? A shadow. Kessler pressed. The man nodded.
Exactly.
He told me to follow him everywhere. Every meeting. Every drive. Every lunch. Every workout. He said if she ever accused him of something serious, I'd be the proof that he wasn't there. An alibi for hire. A pre-built defense. A shield for a crime he hadn't even committed yet. Kessler felt her jaw tighten. And the night Elise disappeared? The man hesitated. He told me to meet him at the Eastway Hotel the entire night. Never leave his side.
Keep him in sight.
He paid me extra for that. So, if she went missing that night, Kessler said quietly, you'd be ready to swear under oath he wasn't anywhere near her. The man nodded once, misery etched in every line of his face. But it doesn't make sense, Kessler murmured. If he knew Elise was planning something, why not confront her? Why stage a disappearance? I don't know, the man whispered. But he wasn't scared of her. He was scared of someone else entirely. Who? She demanded. The answer was a whisper. I never saw their face. But I saw their car. Red sedan. Same one that showed up at Elise's work 3 times. The same one that followed Graham before he hired me. The red car the neighbor mentioned. The puzzle pieces were sliding into place, but forming a picture she didn't like. Before she could question him further, an officer approached with new information. The footprints in the factory weren't just Elise's and the man's. There was a third set. Larger. Deeper. Leading out the back exit. Someone else had been there with them. Someone who walked away alive. Kessler grabbed the man by the arm. You're coming with us. You're going to retrace every step from the night Elise vanished. He nodded shakily. But as they exited the warehouse, her phone buzzed. It was dispatch. Detective Kessler, we've located Graham Harland. Her pulse quickened. Where? His office downtown. Maintenance workers found him locked inside one of the storage rooms. Said he's been calling for help for hours. Kessler stopped cold. Locked inside? Is he injured? She asked. Doesn't look like it. But he's in shock. Says he was abducted. The industrial lot spun around her as a new realization crawled up her spine. If Graham had been held somewhere, if someone had locked him away, If the alibi was constructed by someone else entirely, then maybe. Detective? The dispatcher asked. Kessler forced herself to respond. We're on our way. Downtown, the scene was already chaotic. Paramedics had wrapped Graham in blankets. Police tape stretched across the hallway leading to the storage room. Graham looked pale, exhausted, and wild-eyed. But when his gaze found Kessler's, it hardened instantly. You think I did this, he hissed. You think I hurt Elise. We're trying to understand what happened, she replied evenly. You said you were abducted? Yes, he snapped. A woman hit me from behind in the parking garage. When I woke up, I was in that room. A woman? Kessler repeated. Yes. Graham shouted. She had a mask. She said Elise was gone. Said I'd pay next. I couldn't see her face. Kessler studied him carefully. A woman. A red sedan. A shadow that had followed both of them. What did she want?
Kessler asked.
Graham's expression faltered. For the first time, he looked genuinely afraid. She said something that made no sense. She said Elise wasn't the one betraying me. She said, I betrayed Elise. Kessler went still. Did you? She asked softly. Graham stared at the floor. I didn't. I may have hired someone, but not to hurt her. Just to scare her. Just to get her to stop digging. Digging into what?
Kessler pressed.
He closed his eyes. Silence stretched thin. Finally, he spoke. My company. The real estate deals. Some of them weren't clean. Elise found documents. She confronted me. She was going to turn them in. I panicked. And who did you think she was working with? Graham opened his eyes, fear and confusion swirling like a storm. I thought it was the woman in the red sedan. I thought Elise and she were together. But they weren't, Kessler said.
No.
They weren't. Then who was she? Graham shook his head. I don't know. The man from the warehouse stepped forward, guarded by officers. His voice cracked as he looked at Graham. You never told me someone else was involved. Because I didn't know. Graham snapped. But Kessler wasn't listening anymore. A new pattern had begun forming. Elise had discovered something damaging. Graham hired someone to scare her. A third person, a woman, was involved. She moved Elise's SUV. She left the note. She abducted Graham. And she had a reason to disappear Elise that went beyond money, marriage, or fear. This wasn't a love triangle. It wasn't a business scheme. It wasn't revenge. It was a cover-up. Detective, an officer shouted from the hallway. She turned sharply. We found something in Graham's office. A security drive from the old headquarters building. The woman in the red sedan, she was an employee. Worked for him years ago. Fired during one of his construction scandals. Kessler felt her stomach drop. What's her name? She asked. The officer read from the document. Elise Harland. Kessler's breath caught. Elise had a sister, the officer said slowly. Twin sister. Name redacted from most records because she was involved in a whistleblower lawsuit. Lost the case. Disappeared after that. Graham stepped back in shock. I never knew Elise had a twin. Kessler whispered. She didn't tell you because she didn't trust you. The man from the warehouse swallowed hard. She's the one following him. The one in the red sedan. And the one who abducted him, Kessler added. Graham shook his head violently. But why take Elise? Kessler stared at him, voice low. Because your wife was planning to expose your crimes. And her twin sister had already tried once and lost everything. So, she kidnapped Elise to protect her? Graham yelled. No, Kessler said. The opposite. She looked toward the city skyline, toward the industrial district, toward wherever the missing woman had been taken. She took Elise because she needed her to testify. But she didn't trust Elise's husband. She didn't trust the hired stalker. She didn't trust anyone. Her gaze sharpened. She's rewriting the whole case from the shadows. Graham's voice cracked. Where is Elise now? Kessler didn't answer. Because the truth was hitting her harder than anything so far. If the twin sister wanted Elise alive, she'd have kept her somewhere safe. Somewhere hidden. Somewhere only she knew. But if Elise resisted, if Elise refused, Then the sister might have crossed a line she could never uncross. Kessler's phone buzzed again. A text. No caller ID. Just 5 words. You're looking in the wrong place. And a photo.
Elise. Alive. Bound.
Terrified. Somewhere dark. The message continued. Finish what she started. Then she goes home. Kessler felt the chill crawl up her spine. This wasn't over. Not even close. And as the room spun with panic around her, she realized something else. This wasn't a kidnapping. This was leverage. This was justice twisted into something sharp and dangerous. This was a woman taking back a life she believed had been stolen. But if Graham's crimes came to light, if the sister was cornered, if Elise didn't cooperate, someone was going to die. And Kessler had no idea who. The chapter closes as Kessler looks at the photo, her heart pounding, knowing the case is turned into a collision course with a wounded, desperate woman who had nothing left to lose. And the chilling final thought. The twin didn't accidentally tell the truth. She'd been hiding it for years.